My name is Pat Walsh. I've been in law enforcement a little over 37 years. I've kind of been around. I started in LA County Sheriff, went to Portland, Oregon in 1991, spent the bulk of my career there. Came back to California in 2014, was a police chief in Lompoc, and then got the best job I've ever had. Became the Menifee police chief here in 2019. Yeah, I was I was getting ready for court, frustrated with my tie, couldn't get it right, and I heard my wife scream downstairs, and ran downstairs, and she couldn't even tell me she couldn't even speak. She was pointing at the TV, and stunned like everybody, immediately angry in an unhealthy way right away, and I had to go to court. So, I got in my car, an hour drive to the courthouse, and my partners, we were all there. We were frustrated. We were in the hallway. And I remember the judge stayed in his chambers and watched the news while the rest of us sat out in the hallway on a bench, not knowing what was happening, not knowing if there was more, we didn't have smartphones in our pockets. And we didn't know, and we would go into the courtroom and nobody was in there because they were all watching the news. So we finally, after probably about 2 hours, the courtroom just closed for the day, and we went back to the airport. We worked interdiction narcotics at the Portland airport. And the Portland airport was a zoo because nobody could fly. Everybody that showed up that day everything was grounded. So I remember the next week we would go to work and there was nobody at the airport and nobody was flying. You don't even know that you hear airplanes every day of your life when you're going about your life. And we heard airplanes every day because we worked at the airport, right? And it was a weird silence, and then the only thing that would break that silence was the F-14 Tomcats from Portland National Guard, fully armed, taking off and flying patrol over Portland and the Oregon coast. So it was like everybody, it was a horrible week. And then when they went back to flying, I'll never forget, we were working the front counter, plain clothes. We weren't even looking for narcotics anymore. Now we're looking for terrorists, right? And a very full flight to New York. There was 7 young Arab kids, 18 to 22, all clean shaven, no baggage, no luggage, very nicely dressed. Every one of them had a toothbrush. Everybody else on the line was crying and pointing at them and yelling at the Delta ticket counter folks that they can't get on our plane. And it did look weird, right? It looked like just like they had been talking about on the news, the terrorists that did 9/11, that they purify themselves and then they go do their jihad. And so I told my partners, I said, let them get to the gate and we'll talk to them. So everybody goes through the TSA. TSA wasn't even there yet, but everybody goes through security. And at the gate, it's a mess because women are crying and hugging their children, and the Delta agents again are getting yelled at. And these kids, 7 of them, are off in a corner, huddled. So I went up to them and I badged them and I said, "Who are you guys?" And I was polite, and they said, "Hey, we're just college kids. We go to the University of Oregon, and our parents told us to get out of America. So we didn't even pack our bags." And they legitimately had ID, and I said, "Okay, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna search you, like really, really search you in front of all these people, and it's gonna help you." And they said, "Please." I had them take their shoes and socks off, their belts. I searched them upside down and sideways. And then I told them good luck, and I they were really polite young men, and I said, and good luck. Hopefully you can come back and finish your schooling. I then went over and got everybody's attention in the gate area. I badged them. And I said, look, guys, they're just kids, college kids. They're going home because of what happened. And everybody started crying. And then they felt bad that they had assumed the worst. And so they went over to these kids, and the next thing you know, it was really emotional. It was pretty cool. People were hugging them, brought them in, got snacks out of their bags. It was just how it should be. I didn't expect that to get me. Forgotten about it. Well, I have to say that we were really proud of New York. They're the toughest people in our country, if you ask me, and the way they stood up and handled the incredible chaos and tragedy. I thought Giuliani was amazing. I thought President Bush was amazing, and he said things that made me really proud because he took a really hard stand and he needed to. And you don't. It's one thing to attack our military, but it's another to attack just our innocent citizens. It was pretty cowardly. You just don't do that, and it still stuns me to this day, right? I remember a couple months after that, we went to a narcotics conference, and it was an international conference where interdiction type narcotics officers get together. So there's about 7,000 of us in this room, and we were from all over the country. And actually, there was people from out of the country, out of the country, and we talked about what our job was to interdict narcotics traveling, right? Not just the drug dealer out on the street, but the big loads coming into our country and that kind of stuff. And I remember the first morning we're all in there, and all of a sudden, all of the people that work in the convention center were ushered out of the room, and then there was a Secret Service agent that came in and watched every door in this massive room, and it got really quiet. And then in walked the National Security Advisor for George Bush. And we're like, what is that guy doing here? And then I noticed on this wall, there was computer paper. Remember how it used to print out, not one page at a time? And it went all the way down 3 walls in this conference room. And I hadn't really noticed it before, and he says, I forget his name. Here, you might recognize me. I'm the advisor to George Bush. And if you look, there's a timeline on the wall in this room of terrorists that all of you have stopped and talked to or arrested. And we're like, what are they talking about? We're narcotics cops. And he said, we're embarrassed, but we have not ever, we've kept all this information secret, and we didn't really talk to you. And so you need to know that a lot of people you contact that are moving drugs or narcotics back to wherever it came from are also, they're working for terrorist networks, and we should have been communicating ahead of time, and going forward, we're going to have a relationship. And so the whole discussion was, and they said, and where's Portland, by the way? And we raised our hands, and they specifically talked about 2 guys. We had stopped, and I remember we stopped this one kid, and he had a knife in his just a regular steak knife stuck in his belt, and he fought us when we went to talk to him, and they talked about what terror group he was working for, and that his job was to move dope, get money, and get it back to the terrorist organization. And then we had gotten $68,000 cash off of a Jordanian guy at the airport once. And I remember he was a scary guy when we were talking to him, and this guy said that guy and that money was going straight to bin Laden. He had a connection with bin Laden, and he had a valid passport, and he was able to move around our country. And I just thought, wow, okay, so now I felt like, I've always wanted to protect my community, but now I'm in a position to actually protect my country. And so we paid more attention to, because we weren't thinking about terrorism. Terrorism was overseas. And every once in a while there was a small attack somewhere on America, but for me growing up, terrorism was in Ireland and England, and you know what I mean. So we became experts in behavior of people that are trying to avoid the police, and we were the police in the train station and the bus station and the airports. And so we had a renewed mission after 9/11, and specifically after that meeting at that conference and we interrupted some terrorist cells in the Pacific Northwest. We were a small part of that, so we were real proud of that. Well, I was old enough to have kids in high school, and so I knew a lot of the kids that went to school with them that were a little older than them, and all of a sudden kids are signing up for the military, and we actually got people signing up to be police officers too that normally wouldn't, right? So everybody wanted to do something, and that younger generation got an opportunity to do something. I would not be surprised right now with the attack in Kabul if military enlistments go up. It's just Americans step to the plate when they're needed, and we've lived in peace for so long. Sometimes I think we forget. I hope we never forget about 9/11. And I know it's 20 years ago, and I hope that they're teaching kids still in the schools that it happened, because it did, and it should never have happened, and we should never forget. I had visited New York prior to 9/11, and typical. I was in awe. I mean, it's a massive city. It's got a lot of history to it. But I haven't been back since, and I worked in a big dope case with some New York detectives. Came out to Portland, and after work we went and had a beer, and we were talking, and these two guys, their job was to catalog the property out of the bodies that were brought out of the Trade Center. And we didn't talk about it as much as we do now, but they had PTSD from it. Firefighters and police officers and civilians, I mean, literally they're going through their pockets and bagging it and writing property receipts. And that was not, that's something they'll never forget. And I just thought, wow, what a tragedy for them. So, you think about my age group though, I'm 59. So when I came in as a young police officer, the men that I looked up to that I work with were Vietnam vets. And so they were police officers that trained me, right? And now at this stage of my career, I work with men and women that are heroes from this war that we've been in for 20 years. So I missed it. So I'm in the middle of that, and so I've worked with warriors my whole career, and I'm in awe of them, and just so grateful for them, because I live in a free country because of those type of people that step up to the plate and put themselves in incredible dangerous situations. So I'll never not be grateful for my freedom, and I know where it comes from.